We have an interesting guest with us here today, and has to do about the animal shelter and things like that. And of course, I'm an animal lover myself. I have a cat, and I love him to death. But anyway, I have my good friend Valerie Schey, the city council lady, and Becky Kaiser, Becky Kaiser with us today, and we're going to talk about animals. And I don't like euthanize an animal. I told you that before.
That's right.
If we can save one animal, and my cat could have been one that was saved because he was the shelter.
Yep.
And I tell you what, we dearly love him. We had him for 5 years now.
Wonderful.
And I wouldn't take $1,000. I wouldn't take $5,000 for him.
Well, I'm so glad.
And so you want to start off with what we want to talk about?
Sure. Well, George, thanks for having us on tonight. We are working on updating South Bend's animal control ordinances, and the goal of this newly formed committee that has been appointed by our council president is to take a close look at South Bend's animal care and control laws and try to make some changes that will hopefully help improve the care that animals receive in town, reduce the amount of abuse and neglect that takes place in town, and ultimately provide more animals an opportunity to find loving homes from the shelter. So we're pretty excited.
That's great. I'm excited about it too.
Yeah, and I'm thrilled. Becky has agreed to be part of this committee, and Becky is a lifelong South Bend resident and a very dedicated community advocate.
She's my kind of lady.
So, Becky, maybe would you like to share some of your thoughts on?
Well, I think that one of the things that I was very excited about when Val contacted me about changing the animal ordinances is that currently the ordinances are rather vague. And we've had the conversation that when you have laws that are both the people who have to live under them and the legal committees have to kind of interpret them, and they can be interpreted in different ways, then they're not worth the paper, the ink that they're written on. It also puts us in a position where our animal control officers, in some cases, have their hands tied because they're not exactly sure what those ordinances mean.
And just to add to what Becky has said, so currently, South Bend's animal care and control ordinances, which that would be Chapter 5 of our municipal code. The last time this chapter went through a major update was 1985. So the ordinances that we're operating under today are nearly 30 years old.
Yeah.
And a lot, the standards of care for animals have changed significantly, and animal sheltering itself has changed from the old dog pound, kind of catch and kill method of animal sheltering. So
I remember that very bad. I mean, it was terrible. It was terrible.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Belle.
Yeah. No. So we really feel that it's time to take on this project and bring our animal control ordinances up to today's standards. And as Becky had mentioned, really take a close look at the language in the ordinance, because as Becky mentioned, the language in the ordinance, unfortunately, as it's written today, it's very vague. Words that describe what's proper shelter for an animal include things like sufficient and wholesome and adequate, and those types of words are not strong enough when an animal control officer is dispatched to a call, and they don't have the legal grounds to stand on, because when the owner can debate with them whether it is in fact adequate or sufficient, we need to strengthen that language.
Good idea. Another thing too, I can recall back when I was in Vincennes and was a detective back there, we also had the same thing. I worked for the prosecutor, and about animals, I love animals. I have loved animals ever since I was a little kid. And I've had several dogs over the years, and I've cried many times because they died on me. And we swore one time when I had a cat, we had a cat that both of my Dorothy and I loved, and it got killed out on the highway, on the road. But I don't know how I made back to the basement part of the thing. And I had to watch him die. I couldn't get nobody to come and to give him a shot or anything, and I just felt so sorry for him. And I buried him, wrapped him up in a cellophane thing, and wrapped him up, buried him underneath her window, where she would knew that her kitty cat was with her all the time. Oh, it's sad. It gets sad, you know, when you have an animal you love, and something happens to it, you know, and just like what you're saying about this animal control thing, what we need to do is what you're doing is getting some good teeth into it, mm-hmm. where the control officer can walk into saying, this is what the law says. Mm-hmm. Now, you can do what you want to do, but the law tells me I have a right to do that. Right. And go on the premises and check and see if that animal's behaved. And horses, oh my gosh, I've seen horses that didn't have no meat on them, all the ribs and everything. Mm-hmm. And I had horses. I owned horses one time. Mm-hmm. Just blew my mind when I seen that. And but we do. You're on the right track.
Yeah. Well, we're going to try to make a difference, George. We're really going to try to update these ordinances and give the laws some teeth. And a couple of items that we as a group are hoping to change are we're going to be looking at the pet limit laws. And the hope is that for people in the community who are responsible, loving pet owners, right now in the city of South Bend, the pet limit is 3. And there are many cities that have higher limits than that because they know that a person can be an irresponsible pet owner with even just 1. So these arbitrary numbers aren't really making that much of a difference. So ideally, if we can increase the pet limit law a little bit, it might open a lot of homes up for these homeless critters over at the shelter.
I want to see them get homes. I don't want to see them go out there and be euthanized.
No.
That disturbs me quite a bit.
Well, and one of the things we need to, as we're looking at the ordinances, we need to start looking at oversight for South Bend Animal Care and Control. As someone who worked in the business world, I know that numbers can be used to prove a point or disprove a point, depending on which side of the fence you stand on. Yeah. So community oversight is something that needs to be looked at also. There's no reason why, as we talk about South Bend being a 21st century city, that we should have some of the archaic laws and ordinances that we do. Mm-hmm. So we need to look at that, because if we're going to bring young professionals and businesses into the area, then we have to look at ways to be fiscally responsible, but at the same time, young professionals look at things like, how does an animal control, if I bring my Mastiff to South Bend with me that I've had since I was in college, mm-hmm. am I going to have a problem living in the city limits? Mm-hmm. So we have to look at fiscal responsibility as far as euthanasia numbers and working with rescues, and there's so much we could do to save not only the citizens of South Bend money, but make our animal control center stronger, better, and bring it into the 21st century. 1985 it doesn't sound like a long time from somebody my age or your age, mm-hmm. but it's a lifetime ago as far as you look at the technology and the way...
Oh my, in everything.
In everything. Animal husbandry, everything has changed.
Yes.
We need to come up to the 21st century.
Yes, I agree. You're really hitting my heart. Exactly what...
Well, and you know, I'll add to what Becky said about South Bend working to be a 21st century city. For a lot of young professionals who remain single, people get married later mm-hmm. in life these days. And
sometimes they don't even get married.
And sometimes they don't even get married. And a lot of people choose not to have children, but their pets...
They'll have a pet.
Their pets are like their children.
That's right.
And so... a couple years back, I think in 2010, Forbes magazine ran an article about cities around the country that are called pet-friendly cities. And you know, it's interesting with what Becky had said, young professional people who, you know, they maybe delay and they don't get married, or, you know, they choose not to have children. Pet ownership is a real quality of life issue for a lot of people.
Sure, that's their baby.
That's their baby. And so I think from my position on the South Bend City Council, and when we as a council talk about quality of life types of initiatives such as the arts and those types of things, I would argue that pet ownership is as much of a quality of life issue as
no question,
as a myriad of other things.
No question. I don't think there's any question of that. That's true. You're speaking the truth, dear.
Well, I'm trying to share my thoughts. So.
Well, your thoughts is good.
Well, thank you.
So is Becky's. Becky's thoughts is very good.
Yeah. So I think, we're going to be this committee that myself and Becky and a couple of other really great citizens are going to be on. We're going to be looking at updating the language, because the language is very vague and ambiguous, and that's not good law.
Make it plain.
Make it plain, simple, easy to understand, and easy to enforce. You
need to have it enforceable.
Absolutely. Because what good is a law if you can't enforce it?
No good.
No good.
We have a lot of laws that we can't enforce.
Absolutely. And right now, when you look at our animal control ordinances, so many of them are unenforceable. So we need to put those under a spotlight and say, is this even a law we need?
Right.
If we can't enforce it.
You can't enforce it, what's the use to have it?
Yes, there may be
Same
another way.
thing with other laws. We got other laws like spitting on the street. There used to be a law on that. You couldn't do that. Now it's obsolete. You know, you can spit all you want to.
Yeah.
But so, yes, it's important that we, look at new ways to attack maybe some of the same old problems, but in a much better, more progressive way, so that we're actually solving the problem instead of just letting it out there and have nothing being done because we don't have clear ordinances to take care of it.
Are you overcrowded, the center?
Unfortunately, in 2012, South Bend Animal Care and Control euthanized 66% of the animals they took in.
66%. Ugh.
So
and there's way to be fiscally responsible.
I could
so
look
the
at
taxpayers.
Animals, and I thought, what?
Well, that's why you can only have 3. Because if we let you go in there and you saw those animals, you'd have a house full. And then we'd have to come knock on your door.
But the only thing is George might be a perfectly responsible
exactly.
pet owner. And so if we lifted the pet limit law, George...
Well, I wouldn't have all them pets. I wouldn't have them all, but I want them all. But if I found out they're being euthanized, I'd say, bring them to me.
And George could very well be a perfect responsible owner. And the wonderful thing about that is then, those lives would be saved. And
oh, yeah. I can't... Oh, even the thought of killing them little things, it just.
Well,
most of the ones they euthanize is the big dogs, probably.
Well, and what we're going to really focus on are the things that we can change. And I feel really positive about the work that this group is going to do.
I'm sure you do.
So the language is something we're going to focus on. We're going to tighten up that language so it's easy to understand, easy to enforce. We're going to be looking closely at pet limits and what's a responsible approach to that, where we're mindful of the neighbors, but also providing responsible pet owners the opportunity, if they want to add another kitty or dog to their family and they have the financial means to do so and they take good care of their animals, then we really shouldn't be closing doors for homes for these animals that need homes. The other topic that we're going to be discussing is there's a subject that's referred to as breed-specific legislation, and what that generally refers to is in cities around the country, there are laws that are against specific breeds of dogs, and unfortunately, when they outlaw a specific breed, then tragically, when that animal, if an animal resembles that breed, when it arrives at the animal shelter just based on its breed.
Like a pit bull and things like that.
Exactly.
And pit bull is not a breed.
Pit bull is not a breed?
It is not a breed. It's not recognized as a breed. There's no DNA.
Slang.
It's a slang. Okay, now if you're really going to talk about pit bulls, you would have to use something like bully breeds, because that encompasses bulldogs. But then you have the problem of any dog that comes in with a squarish head could be mistaken as a bully breed. Well, a lab mix can come in that way, a retriever mix can come in that way. So you're euthanizing perfectly safe dogs because they aren't pretty. Well, if that doesn't say something about our society and the way we think, then
Well, we know a lot of people's not pretty too. What are we going to do? Get rid of them?
I'm here.
I don't think you're pretty. You're my kind of gal. I'll tell you.
I think spicy might be better.
Yeah, you're a good fighter.
I think I'll just take it from here now. So,
I'm glad you came around.
yeah, so I think to add to what Becky is saying, so unfortunately with breed-specific laws in place, currently approximately 30% of the dogs that arrive at South Bend Animal Care and Control have been deemed as American Staffordshire Terriers, which is also known, like Becky said, in the slang term as pit bulls.
Oh, really?
And with breed-specific laws in place, unfortunately, what happens is that 30%, with the laws that are in place, they don't even get a chance. Because what we want to see is there's something called a temperament test, and there's all sorts of really great models of these temperament tests. So what we as a group would like to see is for the staff to provide every animal an opportunity based on its behavior and its temperament, not just on how it looks.
Yeah.
And so I think collectively we're working towards trying to amend the ordinances so that it removes just the breed language, but instead we replace it with temperament-specific language so that every animal gets a chance based on its behavior and its temperament, not just on how it looks. That seems, in my mind, a more humane and fair approach.
Well, as I see, a lot of times dogs or an animal is abused a lot of times by the owner, and he's hung out there, he's got an old little shelter that don't mount to anything, a great big log chain about that big around his neck, and he sits there, and they don't provide adequate water or clean water, and see, these are the guys that you want to kick out. And
that's it. We need to stop.
This dog that comes to your shelter, he don't know anything else but abuse. That's all he knows.
That's right.
That's all that animal knows, is somebody beats on him all the time.
Well, you look at the Michael Vick dogs, okay?
Oh, yeah.
The Michael Vick dogs were in circumstances none of us probably can even imagine. And most of those dogs were socialized, temperament tested, and were able to be adopted. But we as a society, a portion of us think, oh, anything that has a square head is a pit bull and has been fighting. Not every pit bull has been fought, just like not every beagle has been hunting. So, we have to kind of widen our horizons just like we do with each other when we look at animal care and control.
Well, and I'll add to what you were saying. This is an ambitious project, and don't get me wrong. We all are aware that it's going to be a lot of work, but it's very important.
I'm a supporter, kid. Don't forget that.
Well, and I'm so thankful that you are. But when you talk about the chain,
and also the chain is wore in here, and magnets coming out of you see that on an animal. My daughter won't watch Animal Planet. She can't stand the fact that these animals are so abused. She has 2 Cairn Terriers.
Well, and that's where we need to. One of the things as a society I think we've fallen down on is we cannot make excuses for people not taking responsibility. We need to pull ourselves up by our pants and say, okay, when it comes, animals are sentient beings, and we need to start, at least at the start of a responsible ownership. And stop falling down on the job and making excuses. If we clarify the ordinances, then nobody can say they didn't understand them, and
give your animal control officer police powers. He's got to have police powers when he goes out, and by doing that, he can go out and get this done, because if you go in there with the 9mm on your hip and everything, it makes all the difference. And you're walking in there, you don't have a thing with you or anything like that. That's important. Try to get that in your thing.
Well, nobody wants the animal control officers to be put in a situation where they are in harm's way. So, once I think we get through the hard part of the ordinances, then maybe we can build up a better relationship with animal control and the police department, so they're working in conjunction, because
they
everyone in some of our neighborhoods, dog fighting is still going on.
Is it?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, it is.
We have it around here?
Yes, we do. And right now, it's a very touchy situation, because you can't send an animal control officer. Battle Creek passed some wonderful laws on dog fighting, where they're using Napoleonic law when they catch dog fighting.
Are they using pit bulls for that, or what?
They use bully-type breeds for that, but they now use Napoleonic law, where if they go in and it's dog fighting, they seize the house, they seize your cars. And the big thing is that people don't realize that many times in the dogfighting world, guns, drugs, both which are illegal.
I've never given a thought that we have it around here.
A lot of people don't realize.
We don't know.
No.
I don't know.
Well, I think the thing is that, as in anything that's unsavory, we'd rather close our eyes to it and pretend it's not there than address the situation responsibly.
Well, I know human trafficking, because as a detective, I've worked in that before, and that is a terrible thing too. They beat up on women, force young girls into prostitution and everything, and you seen that in the newspaper here, where he had this guy, I don't know where he's married to that woman or what it was, but he was a pimp for her, and causing her to go out and sell sex, and how much money you got, and he take the money out of her hand and takes it in his hand. I just like to take him like this here and just choke him like that there.
That's how we feel about these people who abuse these animals.
Well, exactly.
We want to do that too.
Well, that's a human being, what this guy's doing.
You're right. And
that's a human being.
But here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand, and they've proven this through FBI studies, that if you're willing to do that to an animal,
oh, you do it to anybody.
You'll do it to a human being.
Do it to anybody.
And the thing is that's when we talk about responsibility, not only are we thinking about changing the ordinances, but Val has pushed very hard for education in the schools, so that children are being taught how an animal should be addressed and cared for, so that can carry on. Because once you understand that is a feeling being, in most cases you're going to treat it better. I think sometimes we forget that they are sentient beings. They have feelings. They need the same things we do. Are they human beings? No, I don't put them in the same
realm. Well, they're not human beings,
but they do. They're just
they
like,
got feelings, just like we have feelings.
There's a stewardship.
An animal has feelings too. You don't believe it? Ask my cat.
I hope he doesn't answer me, George.
He goes out there, and when he thinks Dorothy's going to leave, he gets out on top of her car, jumps up on top of her car, so she won't leave without him. He's a cutie. But anyway, this is a little angel here. She's a little angel. I love her. She's nice. Nice person, and not only that, a good activist.
Well, and that's what we need.
And it's just like you, Becky. And you guys are good workers together. But you need the help. You need to help and get people. You need to get the citizenship behind you. And this is what I hope this program will do. Now, you'll get a copy of this program, and then you can take that copy and show the copy around what you're doing. And you don't have to talk. You talk. Let the video talk for you.
I think that's what we're going to do, George.
I think that's the right thing to do.
That's what we're going to do, and we're very thankful that you gave us this opportunity. We're doing our best. Becky's involved in several neighborhood organizations, and we've got several meetings coming up, and with your help with today's show, we're going to get the word out, and hopefully we'll be able to make a difference for the animals.
Stick it in your VHS, or not your VHS, but DVD. And when you have these meetings or something, just play it on there. So
exactly.
They get the word out. They get the message, right?
That's right.
This is what this is all about, education. what we're trying to do is educate the people and using our everything that Valerie and the city council and the mayor has provided for us. Thank God we have some people on the council and also with the mayor's office. That mayor, I just love him to death. I could take, he reminds me of my son. I could just take him and squeeze him and everything. And when he played that Rhapsody in Blue at the theater.
He's a talented guy, isn't he?
Oh my God, I tell you, people stood up and applauded and everything. And they stood up, Dorothy, my wife and I were there, and we were just, tears running down my eyes for him. And after I'd seen him over to City Hall over there one day, and he started walking out. I said, hey, son, come here a minute. I want to grab and hold and hug you. He said, you do? And I said, yeah, and he had a cop behind him there. And so he said, don't hug me too hard. There's a guy watching you back there. And so I said, you know, I adore you. I think you're a wonderful mayor. I hope you're there for a long time. If you don't run for Senate, let me know, and I'll be one of your supporters.
Oh, there you go.
And so anyway, this has been a nice chit-chat with you, and I'm educated to the fact what you're trying to do. And you can always call on me. I'll be available, and anything this lady wants to do, I'm behind her 100%.
Fantastic.
And so as the time eases on here, we're just about ready to close up the show. And Becky, I'm glad you were able to be here with us.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Well, I will. I'll have you again. And my Val here, my Val here. She's wonderful. This is George Lane. Thank you for watching the show. Hope you let me know how you like the show. And we'll be back again with another show. And keep watching and let us know how you like our shows.